Tonight, at least tonight in my time zone, we're going to talk about game accessibility. Who am I to talk about game accessibility? Well, that's the good question, because normally we talk about web accessibility. That's my job. I am a web accessibility specialist at ING, which is a Dutch bank. I also audit websites as a freelancer. And I like to stream. And what happens when you stream is that you meet a lot of gamers. And in my case, I'm even part of a team, as they call it, a group of gamers that all have their own disabilities. And most of them stream about games instead of web accessibility, like I do. I'm the exception here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm John, GlitchedVision 0101 on Twitch, or John with the GlitchedVision on Twitter. I have a visual impairment known as optic nerve hypoplasia. It's essentially my eyes don't communicate that well with the brain because the nerve pathway didn't fully develop. It's like trying to send an HD camera feed through dial-up internet.
So for technical inclined people, you could almost say it's just low resolution?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And what do you do in your daily life?
Sit around, play video games, and watch anime. Pretty
Sounds
much.
good. Sounds good. And we're just talking for a bit. You are looking for something new, if I understand correctly?
Indeed, I would love to fully get into video game accessibility in some fashion.
Yeah, because of course you play games, you have personal experience, but do you have professional experience, or what's your background?
Well, I have a degree in IT systems and network security technologies. However, I have had zero luck getting a job in either of those fields. I've been gaming pretty much since I was old enough to hold a controller. So I've played everything from the old Atari 2600 all the way up to modern PS4 and Xbox One titles.
I bet we could fill an hour with just that history timeline, right?
But pretty much.
And what are some memorable games for you? Like which games have shaped you?
Super Metroid, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and the Mega Man X series are some of my favorites.
Okay, so strong Nintendo link.
Yes.
Cool, that's very good. And right now you're streaming like 3 times a week.
The uppers, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, normally.
And what kind of stuff do you play?
Pretty much anything and everything. I'm pretty variety. I've been hooked on Empyrean lately. Empyrean Galactic Survival. It's like a sandboxy survival craft type game. I've been known to do Minecraft. Been known to do Slay the Spire and Monster Train. Pretty much anything and everything. If I enjoy it, I'll stream it. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, there are so many options, right? Which is good.
Yeah.
And if people watch you, is it then for the games or for having a chat? Do you have a community? What's drawing the people in?
Personality and discussion. I love talking with people. I love attracting people with an open mind who can just sit and chill and chat about just about any topic. The game's not really the focus. I tend to think of my streams like I'm inviting a friend into my living room to sit back on the couch behind me and watch me play a video game and just talk while we play.
Except they shouldn't give you any hints, right?
Oh, hints are fine and welcome. I don't mind
Yeah.
hints.
Okay. So the whole backseat gaming thing, is that a thing for you?
It's not necessarily disallowed, but I don't like those people that tell me you should do it this way and exactly this way. But I don't mind those, those random occasional tips like, hey, did you know about this? I'm like, no, I didn't. Thanks for teaching me. And I start using it.
So that's more the trivia and stuff you would like to know then.
Yeah. I love game trivia.
Yeah. And there's so many. I mean, in the good games there are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. So I'm really curious about game accessibility because what can I say? I do play games, of course. That's who doesn't, I would say. I'm see. Oh, we're not full screen, by the way. I can make us bigger. I'm just gonna change this setting. Always so many options. Full screen. Yeah, there it is. The big button. Every tool is different. But anyway, so I play games. I guess everybody does.
These days, yeah.
Yeah. I have experience with disability. Some only later in life, and they kind of grew on me as far as that's possible with disabilities. But I have not encountered many disabilities within games. What are like the most basic things that people can do to improve their game?
Contrast and UI. Make sure everything is easy to see and clear as to what it does at a glance. Like that's one of the big things for especially low vision. For like no vision for totally blind players, that won't help as much. For that, you need sound cues. Sound cues, sound cues, sound cues.
Yeah.
Helps everyone.
Yeah, but clearly labeled stuff is not just for vision, right? It's also for cognitive disabilities and yeah. I'm just seeing recognition from the website of things. Like 9 out of 10 websites are featuring icons these days. All these small images that you see everywhere on the page, except they are not labeled. I guess that's the same issue.
Yes, it is.
And then contrast, so everything should have enough contrast.
Definitely.
And things should stand out. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, like
yeah, go ahead.
let's say you're in a level with a lot of tall grass around you, and you've got this little enemy that's green, the same color of the grass, and it's just tiny little ankle biter. If you can't see it, it's gonna kill you, and you're not gonna know why.
Yeah, it's just gonna keep eating that ankle of yours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Team Fortress that once had this, or Team Fortress 2, I should say, that once had this sort of narrated version of the game. And they explained a lot about how they had silhouettes in the game and different levels of contrast. And I found that really, really interesting. I think they also mentioned something, but I think that's also League of Legends that does it, but maybe more. That the more important something is on the screen, that the more contrast it has. And I really liked hearing that. Like, that's such a conscious decision in game design.
It is. I love that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I think it was League of Legends as well that said, like, when you have, like, the play field, which is basically more of a background, that's pretty much low contrast, but the heroes, the ones that you really should follow, they're like the highest contrast and the brightest colors. And I bet there are so many subtle things that you could improve just from the design alone.
Actually, there's a funny story about League of Legends. Back in the very early days, you could get shot by towers, and there was no cue that you were the one targeted by the tower until you started taking damage and seeing the bolts fly at you.
Yeah, that sounds like League of Legends. Yeah.
Yeah, back at that time, I was in their forums, and I pushed heavily for them to add some sort of a sound cue or some sort of an extra cue to let people know, hey, you are now the target of this tower. You might want to move.
Yeah, like AQ besides dropping your health bar.
Yeah. Because when I was playing that game at the very beginning, most of my deaths were due to towers, not enemy heroes.
Yeah, that's not the best experience. No.
No.
Yeah, that game has come from really, really far. Like, I play it every now and then. Not too much because it gets on your nerves. Just by the community alone, it has that power.
Oh yeah.
But like all the visual aspects of the game, it has grown so much, and there are so many subtle things going on. You can notice that it's really big business.
Totally.
I actually had the pleasure of photographing their Dutch data center once. Like, they have a data center for Western Europe, and they moved it to Amsterdam at a certain point. And when they were just setting it up, and all the complaints were really big, of course, at that time, I took pictures of it. And that's really, really impressive. Yeah. I used to be under an NDA, but I think that's over now. Let's hope it's over, right?
Didn't tell me what it was inside, or what was inside it, or what it looks like. So.
No, but I think I'm allowed to share pictures now these days. So maybe I should do that soon.
Oh, wow.
But that was really impressive. Like, they they had this enormous space, and they had servers with all kinds of functionality, like split responsibility. Yeah, there we have our first viewer with a good time zone, because that's what we usually say. Like I said to you, I said good evening, but I don't know what time zone everybody is in, even with people watching
Indeed,
back.
it would have been afternoon for me. So yeah,
Yeah, because for the people viewing, where are you at right now?
I am in the Central Time Zone, U.S. and Canada, down in the big giant state of Texas.
That's really broad. That's easy. Yeah. But let's get back to games. You said two of the most important things are contrast and UI.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you open up a game for the first time. I'm not specific about platform or anything. What are the first things that you would check?
So whenever I first open a game, the first thing I go to is the options menu. I want to see what options there are for people who have various levels of disability. So I look for things like difficulty settings. I look for controller remappings. I look especially for graphics options because of my own disability. And I look pretty much at every option there is.
Yeah, so most of the strength is in the options.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And we keep saying that 2020 has been a terrible year for many reasons. But for game accessibility, it's been pretty good, right?
It has. We've seen great improvements. Like 2019 was the start of the snowball rolling down the big hill in terms of game accessibility, and it's only kept going.
Yeah. And is there? Do you think there's a reason, something that started all this?
Honestly, I don't know, but I do know that the age of the average gamer is getting closer to that retirement age every single year. So I think the AAA companies and pretty much all the companies in general are realizing that if they want to keep their money in the bank, they're going to have to start making their games playable by a wider variety of people that may have a disability of some kind.
Yeah, that's nice that you say wider, because I almost misunderstood and thought you said whiter, because they're all going to be gray and white haired. That's basically the public. But yeah, I guess that's true. It's true for a lot of companies. Like the population is graying, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
So you think it's just like the Times and the public? Do you think
I do
like
believe so.
are there also specific games that have set a good example?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there are. A lot of them are indie titles, though. It's been only just recently that AAAs have started to take notice, and we've wound up seeing things like The Last of Us 2 and that glorious accessibility and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard to name indie titles because odds are they're less famous, right?
Actually, I can think of two right off the top of my head that one was pretty famous when it was released,
Yeah.
and the other one is now starting to earn its fame.
Which were those?
Celeste with the assistive menu,
Yeah, that's a
and
platformer,
now we
right?
have, yep, and now we have Hades with its God mode.
Okay, so that's a god mode. That's a mode in which you can enjoy the game, but you cannot die.
No, actually, this is where Hades gets very intriguing with its accessibility option. And it's also where we get to the point of we don't want things to be super easy as disabled people. We just want to be able to experience the same level of challenge. And for different people, that challenge is going to be at different points. So, what God mode does in Hades is whenever you activate it, you get a base 20% resistance to all damage. Every time you die, that damage resistance increases by 2% to a maximum of 80% damage resistance. So you still get to enjoy the struggle of failing your way through the game and learning the patterns, but every time you do, you're not only that much more mentally prepared for what's to come, but your stats are also a little better and you can take a little bit more punishment.
So it's like a sort of hardening, I guess,
Yeah,
except without the Pokemon stuff that goes
pretty
on with.
much.
Yeah,
And not only that, but Hades itself as a game is designed in a way that you can only get and understand the full story if you die repeatedly.
yeah. It's
It's
named
a
after the Lord of
roguelike.
the.
Yeah.
It's named after the Lord of the Underworld for a good reason.
Mm-hmm. It's a
Yeah,
roguelite, and roguelite games are very famous for their replayability. So what they wanted to do is give people a chance to experience the story and as much of the game as possible without removing the experience of playing a roguelite, of having to go through points where, yes, you died. Big whoop. You still brought back stuff that will make your next run easier.
yeah,
A lot of people are put off by that.
yeah. There was a point in time where I thought maybe I should do a game study or something because it's a really interesting subject. And this is almost like an art-like approach, you know. You see what a roguelite is like, what such a game should be, and then you take one aspect, you shouldn't die, and you just swap it around. You say you should die. Please die as much as
Mm-hmm.
you can almost. And dying is like what makes the experience of the game. And I really like that. That's a really well thought out experience.
I forget the name of it, but there's actually a platformer where your previous deaths stick around on the screen. So there may be points where you have to jump into a pit of spikes
Yeah.
because that corpse now becomes a platform to help your next life get across.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, and I think there was this Flappy Bird like Mario game where you could see all the other people dying. And I really liked that because it was like a live data visualization of what the hardest parts of the game were.
Mm-hmm.
So death starts
And
playing a whole different role.
and by watching other people's failures, you could see, sort of figure out how to get through it yourself.
Yeah, or just laugh.
Yeah, it was in Mario Maker.
Yeah,
Mario
exactly.
Maker
Yeah,
had that.
that's the one. Okay. Yeah, I've got the new one for the Switch. Yeah, now we've got somebody saying I just laugh. Yeah, that's why we play games as well, right?
Yes,
Not
yes,
everybody
indeed.
has the winning ambition when you can just enjoy yourself. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
so
always best to find that enjoyment.
yeah, Hades is on my list really. Like there's this endless list of games, of course, because I never have enough time, but Hades is pretty much on top. I'm very
And it
curious to.
keeps growing.
Yeah, always. Like Baldur's Gate was just released, the third.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's an accessible game, but I used to wreck it as a how old was I? I was like 15 years old, so I played it so much, so much. Like the first
Nice.
one, the book was falling apart because I read it so many times. So I
Mm-hmm.
hope this one is of the same quality, but we'll find out. We've got a year before it's final, probably. So time for some feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd
maybe,
like to get into it, but I just can't justify $60 for the first chapter just yet.
yeah, it's a lot, right? You don't know what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't bought it yet either, but it's very tempting just for nostalgic reasons, which is why they make all these remakes and everything anyway. Nostalgia
Mm-hmm.
powers the whole industry these days.
Totally.
Yeah. Um. So, could you describe your perfect game for me? Like, what would make things like work for you?
All right. So the perfect game to me, and this is pretty much genre agnostic. Yeah, can't English today, but perfect genre agnostic game, which means it doesn't matter what type of game it is. The
I, I
perfect accessible game.
I'm not English, so whatever you do, you sound like a wizard to me.
It would have full UI customization. I mean, like replacing every element on the screen wherever you want it to be, HUD size, making it as big or as small as you needed it, opacity, being able to make it as like solid or invisible as you wanted.
Because customizing plays a big
Various
role, right? Always.
Yes, yes. one size does not, in fact, fit all, despite what many people would like to believe. The more options you can give a player, the more accessible the game will be at the end of the day.
Yeah, if there's one thing for certain, that there is no one size. I mean, not ever.
Mm-hmm.
So customizability.
Yes. More options.
And
Options for everything.
does that concern the physical part for you as well? Do you customize your controls or anything?
I sometimes do, depending on the game. And depending on my level of comfort with the controls as given.
And are there...
Sometimes I can wrap my head around it perfectly. Other times I like to have it set in a similar way as something else.
Yeah, right, because you got the muscle strained and everything.
So, like, a perfect example a perfect example of this is Dauntless. It's a multi-platform game I've played on the Xbox 360, or Xbox One, I mean, the Nintendo Switch, and my PC. I love playing Dauntless with a controller, and on the Switch, there's this A and B button flip. So I always go in the options and flip A and B in game so that I'm pressing the same button to jump across every platform.
Yeah, that's a small big thing.
Yeah. It's just a little muscle memory issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's valuable for more people that know of the option, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that if people think about vision issues, that they often tend to go for audio games or something alike. Do audio cues play a big role in games these days?
They don't play as much of a role as they should, to be truthful. In some games, they're really good, but in other games, they need a lot of work.
Because there are people that play like beat 'em ups and those sort of games just purely based on audio, right?
Oh, yes. Head-to-head, like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Killer Instinct, fighting games are the best games to play by sound alone, by far.
Yeah, which feels so counterintuitive somehow, because I mean, even by seeing the games, they are hard to play. So I guess it levels the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a kind of genre you like as well?
I do enjoy my occasional fighter.
All up in the mix.
Oh, yeah.
So what are the current games that really like work well or work bad for you?
Um, Hades for one. I love Hades. Slay the Spire is another one, though they've actually just come out with a specific mod for Slay the Spire that's really awesome. If you haven't seen it already, look up Say the Spire mod on Steam's mod page.
And what does the mod do?
It opens up the text within the game to the clipboard, the Windows clipboard, so that it can be read by screen readers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it basically is a game with an accessibility API.
With that mod, yes. That mod gives it an accessibility API and makes it fully blind playable with no vision at all.
That's a big difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how common is that?
Not as common as I would like it to be.
No, never, of course. But is that something like in 10% of the games, or 50 or 80 or?
I only know of 2 games that have a feature that exports text directly to a clipboard in Windows.
And which is the other one?
The other one is Skullgirls. It's a fighting game, which is already audibly accessible in most cases anyway. So but it exposes the storyline text and like who you're hovering over on the character select screen, your options, all that. It exposes that text to the clipboard, so you can hear it rather than read it.
Because how useful is something like a screen reader when you're playing a game?
In most cases, it isn't. But there are things that would be nice to be able to have read to you rather than see an overlay of.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because my background is in the web, and that largely depends on how your browser works together with your screen reader. Like if it works together at all. And one of the things that people do wrong is they put text in images. But
Oof,
I'm
I
afraid
hate that.
yeah, but I'm afraid games are mostly text and images, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mostly get pixels presented.
Yeah, there is nothing that annoys me more than image may be text, or seeing, hearing from my screen reader, image of text. Like, what does text say?
Yeah. Thanks for that extra useful information, but please continue.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
Yes, image of text. Question mark? What does text say? Please
Yeah.
tell me.
So for games for you, it's mostly zooming in, I guess, and having having everything at the right size.
Well, if I have to read a lot of stuff, then yeah, I'll zoom in on the text. But otherwise, I don't tend to have to zoom in because then I've got even less screen real estate to work with.
Yeah, and that's always a challenge. Never enough screen
Yeah.
real estate. Yeah. And do you also have experience with people with other disabilities playing games?
As a matter of fact, I do. Working with the accessible streamers gives me a lot of experience with a lot of different disabilities playing video games.
Yeah, because for the people watching accessible streamers, that's the stream team that we're part of. So there's a lot of people present, but also how do you say it? Represented in there as well, I guess. A lot of people with disabilities try to find us when they have a question about gaming, which I find really interesting. And I often see that customizing controls plays a big part in lots of these experiences.
The biggest accessibility tip I can give you if you're wanting to design a video game is give the player the options.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that goes for the web as well. We've discussed that a few weeks ago, so that's really nice. Yeah. I mean, the need to change your font size, for example, that's universal, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
I think it would be
So,
really, yeah.
there's some cases where even the largest font in the world is just not enough, so you've got to give players the option to have whatever in-game alerts or text appears on screen narrated in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny thing. I just mentioned that, like, I play League of Legends every now and then. It's one of the few games I do play. And it's basically all clicking. So it's rather important that you know where your cursor is. And the busier it gets, the harder for me it is to find my cursor. I've always had this problem. I've had surgery this year, and it got an even worse probably. And you can enlarge the cursor, but there's a maximum. And the maximum is not enough. That's like 200% or something.
I know this seems counterproductive, and this might be just a bit strange to hear. And even hardcore MOBA players are going to be like, you're crazy. But I think a controller with a little bit of aim assist would offer just as much accuracy as a mouse.
I've never been much of a controller player, to be honest.
Look at it from this perspective. If you're playing a MOBA of some kind, let's take League of Legends or one of my other favorites, which is, what was the name of this one? Trying to remember it now because I haven't played it in a while.
Dota or?
No, it's one of the mobile platform MOBAs.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they have controller support, but if you use a controller in this particular game, you don't have to worry about where's my pointer, where's my arrow. Move with the left stick, aim with the right, treat it like a twin stick shooter, and you'll have about the same level of accuracy as you will with a mouse.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's
especially if there's a minor bit of aim adjusting going on.
Yeah, so there's a whole different approach to controlling it. Yeah, I can imagine that works. Yeah, I've always been a PC gamer mostly, especially for shooters. Like I had the Nintendo Entertainment System. That was my first console. But you didn't have shooters back then, so you didn't need you didn't need aim assist or anything.
Yeah.
that wasn't up to basically Nintendo 64. And I never had
Mm-hmm.
one, and I never had a console afterwards, and now I have a Switch. And now I have to learn to navigate in 3D with a console.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's like a whole new world, or at least a new dimension, literally.
Yeah.
So I see we have some people in the chat right now. If there are any questions about game accessibility, I'm just gonna assume you know more than I do. If there are any questions at all, please ask them. Like John
Indeed.
is,
I love to answer.
yeah, John is here to inform us about all the things that we don't know, which is probably a lot. So please ask your questions. Yeah, I'm constantly thinking about the overlap with web stuff. Like there's so many principles that go the same way, and that's really interesting.
Exactly.
Like knowing what to expect, contrast.
Well, it's like the principles of digital accessibility in general, and they should apply to any form of digital media, whether it be art, video games,
Because
websites.
is there something like a guide, or are there guidelines for how games could be made accessible?
There is actually. ablegamers.org has a very extensive list of ways that you can make a game more accessible.
And is this something that people follow, or is that their own guide for testing, or how is this positioned within the field?
Well, right now it's just a list of here's what we feel are best practices. There's nothing standardized yet.
Do you know anything about web accessibility or what it's based on?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I had my text to chat speech reader reading chat to me at the
Yeah, you got a
moment
question
that
right there.
overlapped.
We'll just pick up the question.
Yeah.
So, sort of related, this week a dev rating guild downed Mythic Enzoth, current endboss of WoW, and it's World of Warcraft. I've played that. That's a really long time ago. So, World of Warcraft is accessible enough that a completely deaf rating guild can play it. Apparently, have you ever played it?
Actually, yes. No, I haven't, but it's not as accessible for the blind as it would be for the deaf because most MMOs in general, MMOs in general are more visual based than auditory.
Yeah, it's a
They
complex
have
world,
a
right?
chat system, but it's text. No audio chat in most of them. So audio chat usually has to be done through other means and other programs. And if you're trying to run raids with randoms in public, you're not going to have that audio chat to fall back on. You're going to have to rely on that text chat. And if you're somebody with low to no vision, you can't read that text chat.
Yeah, so maybe it's even more enjoyable to have a group which all uses the same chat format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. And I've got somebody sharing now, aside from the Able Gamers guidelines, there's also this, which is gameaccessibilityguidelines.com. Are you familiar with this?
Yep. That's something that was continues to be worked on and iterated on by the Game Accessibility Conference, I do believe.
Okay, that's nice. Is that the one in Toronto, or?
I believe so.
Good. Yeah, when talking about the web, we often follow what we call WCAG. So that's WCAG, and that stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that's a whole big set of criteria, and they have like four, how do you call it, pylons, four principles they are based on. And that's everything should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable means, for example, that if something like an image is shown, that there should be a text alternative. If there is audio, there should be text as well. It's often about alternatives and offering something in multiple ways. That's about perceivable. So everybody should be able to perceive whatever you make. Operable means often that everybody should be able to control whatever you have. Like if it's only usable by mouse, then you're gonna have a lot of angry people with screen readers and keyboards that are not able to use it. Understandable is also about language and content. So, for example, if you have a French website, in theory, it should be marked up as a French website. So your screen reader announces it as French, which sounds quite different than English, I've known. And then
Yes, it does.
robust. Yeah, it does, right? Yeah, I'm happy I'm not the only one noticing that. And then there's robust, which basically means that you should build stuff in such a way that you cannot just use it now with current technology, but also in the future. So you follow standards. So it's actually solid. Yeah, robust. It's a really nice word for it. Are these principles that you recognize from gaming as well?
I wouldn't say that they're phrased in that same way, but yeah, that the same thing applies with game accessibility. The biggest thing with the first one is the perceivable. If you have anything that requires attention, whether it be a visual cue for an enemy attack, a notification of low health in some form or whatever, give that in multiple forms. Don't just have the attack animation play and there's no sound cue.
Yeah.
Letting you know, hey, you should get out of the way of this because you cannot block it. If you don't hear anything, you're just gonna see a motion and try to block, and nope, can't block.
Yeah.
Knocked on your butt.
And just like web accessibility, it sounds so simple.
Mm-hmm. So multiple channels of information is a big one. The next one, all of those channels have to be easily understood. So if you, let's say you do have that tell for an attack, you can't have two attacks that use the same tell with one blockable and one not.
Yeah, so you should be to differentiate basically.
Yes. You've got to make sure all the information presented is clear and understandable without any other additions, because you want people to be able to learn it quickly, pick it up quickly, and master it so that they can move on to the next lesson they've got to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah, the same principles generally apply. As for the robustness, that comes in the form of more options, because of course guidelines are going to change, but it's not often where game devs go back and bring new technology to older games. So for that, it's got to work very well within its given technology, because even as technology changes and evolves, it becomes sort of a preservation of what it was like at the time. And if it's accessible at the time, then it should be accessible in the future.
Yeah. And I can imagine that
even after technology changes.
Yeah. I can imagine that if it's robust, it has lots of options and maybe even works together with other APIs or programs, like with Notepad, like you said. That's also a way of making it robust, right? It's externally approachable. It's not just captured by the game, but you can use your tools to it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just taking it all in. There's a lot to interpret and to yeah, I'm getting these like ideas of overlap and seeing where one field could maybe learn from the other.
There's a lot of overlap.
Are there things that you've experienced on websites or in other digital tools that you would like to see in games as well?
I'm gonna be honest here. I would love it if a cutscene heavy game implemented a descriptive audio mode.
Oh, right. So you don't just get the text, but also what happens in the cutscenes?
Where you're not just getting the visual representation, but you also have the narrator, similar to like a lot of Netflix shows, official Netflix shows have it nowadays. If you're wondering what descriptive audio is, just pull up some Netflix and scroll down in your audio options, and at the very bottom you should see something of descriptive audio.
At the bottom, of course. Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's at the bottom. Why can't it be near the top? But hey,
It's
at
there.
least it's there.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, and like the other way around, do you think that other media could learn something from games?
Most indefinitely.
Any examples?
I'm not sure what, but There's definitely always stuff to learn from other areas.
Maybe we've got some questions from the chat as well. Ah, here. What a timing.
There is one, actually.
What a timing. Well, if you can see it, you can answer it, right?
Yeah, like the whole options separating out into distinct accessibility menus, that's actually a good point of contention because a lot of people in the gaming industry, they're split. It's a 50-50 split. Some people like them separated out because people know where to go to find the options. But other people don't like them split that way because the average person who might benefit from these options sees, oh, accessibility options. I don't need those.
Yeah, because that's for the people that don't follow. I think I've heard a little bit about this. It's the idea that the options that improve accessibility are often behind a keyword accessibility. And some people say yes, they should be behind an accessibility menu or option or whatever. And other people say no, it should just be normal options, and the people that need them know that they're there for accessibility as well. That's basically the idea, right?
Mm-hmm. I am of the mindset that they need to be mixed in. Like, if it's a sound option or an audio option of some kind, put it in the audio options. If it makes the game more accessible to people that need it, so be it. The average person may even turn it on and realize they like it better that way. And then when they're, talking to their friends, hey, I use this option, another friend might come in and say, hey, did you know that that option was put in there for blind people to be able to play the game? And they're like, no, I didn't know that. It helps to raise that awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
If these options are normalized just like every other option, then there's no stigma against using them.
Yeah, if I try to interpret from my own background and what I've seen and noticed as well, I think it depends on where the phase of where game accessibility is at this point. Like, in a certain way, it could be really useful to just have the awareness. Like, I can imagine if it was 5 years ago and you said, hey, this game has accessibility options, then you want to show everybody, hey, there's this accessibility menu, and you're going to promote it and you make it part of your media campaign, and it's like an awareness tool. So you tell people, hey, accessibility is a thing. Have you heard about accessibility? We've got it. That's what you tell. But in the end, I guess the goal is to be inclusive. And if everybody is aware, that's of course a very noble goal. But once it's inclusive, it's even better because everybody can use it indeed.
In my honest opinion, I think the absolute best way to do it is to take the duplicated approach.
So like a filter?
And what I mean, no. What I mean by that is look at Minecraft, for example. Pretty much every option in Minecraft that is an accessibility option can be found in other places of the option menu that are linked to their respective areas, right?
So you get the best of both worlds.
Yes, but there's also a dedicated accessibility menu that pulls all of the options that are there that are specifically for accessibility to the forefront for those who just need to find them quickly.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's that double layered approach. On one hand, they're mixed in with everything else, but yet they're also duplicated in their own menu. It allows companies to advertise them and be like, look, see, we have accessibility. It allows people to normalize them and be like, hey, these are just regular options.
Yeah.
What's it doing in the accessibility menu?
Yeah. That if you're at the point that you say, hey, my hair is turning gray, that you can just say, hey, maybe I would like a larger UI or larger text or whatever, and you don't have to feel like it's an accessibility option.
Exactly. It does a lot to normalize it if they're in more than one place.
Yeah, and what people like to say about web accessibility as well is that everything that you improve for accessibility, or nearly everything at least, also has benefits for other people as well. I mean, if you make readable buttons, for example, nobody's gonna complain about, hey, those buttons are too readable. Like that's a benefit for
Exactly.
everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although I have had users that said, hey, those buttons are so big, like they're like Sesame Street buttons. Are you taking us seriously? That's also a way to look at it, apparently. But I think the easier you make it, the better. When you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about UIs, I mean, gaming, of course, is a different approach. You have to question if you want to make it as easy as possible. But if you can help
Definitely.
everybody, yeah,
And here's the biggest thing, though, too, and this is something that a lot of people don't quite understand, right? Is that whenever it comes to the accessibility and disability landscape, there's currently two camps of people that are pushing for options, right? One camp is like, this needs to be so easy that anybody can fully complete any game, which I don't feel is the way it needs to be done, right? I feel that we as disabled people just want the same right to struggle through tough games just like everyone else.
yeah, make it
But
enjoyable.
an inaccessible game is not enjoyable. It's not just about being not completable in any form. It's about being so punishing and so brutal that it's just not enjoyable to struggle through.
The struggle should be in the gameplay and not part of the UI or handling your console or whatever.
Exactly. It shouldn't be a struggle with mechanics. It should be a struggle with actually playing, like the difficulty of the areas you go through.
Yeah, and actually, I have my own personal, very specific experience these times as
Thank
these times as
you.
well. Yeah,
Thank you. Active Bit. He got it just right. A game
yeah,
without barriers is a movie. All we need to do is equalize the barriers.
yeah. Sounds good.
That's right on the money.
Because if it's a movie, yeah, then all the scenes in between just become the entire game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a collection of cutscenes.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I've been looking actually for specific types of games, which is rather funny. My daughter is gonna turn 4 in December, and if I started out with Super Mario Brothers, like on the Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
I used to jump, and then if I fell, I also fell off the couch. It was really interactive. Um, but I want my kid to learn gaming, and I don't want her to focus on enemies and killing stuff. That'll come later, sure. But right now, just the idea of a platform game, being able to jump and to run and to climb, that's already a challenge. So what we actually found is a game, and it's actually a Paw Patrol game. It's not something I would have
Mm-hmm.
bought just by the name of it, but it is a game where you cannot die because there are no holes to fall in, there are no enemies. You just have to run around and find the end of the level. And it's perfect. And I never thought that would be a perfect game, but it is. It's really interesting because that's in a way that's also a sort of accessible game because it's enjoyable. There are still goals, um, but the goal is no longer to stay alive. It's just to finish the level. And if I understand correctly, with the Super Mario Brothers, there's the newest version, I must say. There's a likewise option that you can choose different sort of heroes, and there's also one that doesn't fall down or doesn't die. And that way, people can enjoy the story, and they can go through the levels, and they can puzzle, and they can do wayfinding and whatever. But they don't have to worry about this specific concern, and I think that's a really interesting approach.
I do as well, but I think that particular approach can be easily handled by like minimizing the cost of failure in that aspect.
Yeah,
So like a lot of games these days have this mindset of brutal, punish you if you do wrong, you failed, you must go all the way back to the last checkpoint, which could be like 30, 40 minutes away,
yeah. Especially on
instead of,
streams, they're
oh,
popular, right?
But yeah, instead of, oh, I messed up. Here, let's rewind time for you by about 10 seconds. Okay, now you're just before you miss that jump. Try again.
Yeah. Try, and try again. Keep trying.
Yeah, reduce the fail loop. Because the fail loop becomes the frustration loop if
Yeah.
it's not able to be overcome.
Yeah, but I do appreciate the awareness of game designers then knowing what the actual frustration is.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, actually, PC Guy, Prince of Persia Sands of Time did do it pretty well, but eventually you could get stuck in a point where you've saved your game now. Your last checkpoint is the last save point if you die without sand in your hourglass. And you've only got one rewind left in your hourglass.
So they were like semi-aware. It was like a
Yeah.
first step.
It was a first step. As long as you've got time, sand in your hourglass or in your dagger within that game, you can rewind time as much as your sands will allow. But there's that resource management limit.
Yeah. Yeah, something I've started to notice because as a dad with limited time and energy, I play games differently. And what I
Mm-hmm.
often miss in games is I can't just pick it up again. You know, when you start a game, you get this tutorial and you get into the flow and you get these new tools and you get new challenges and you're building up this whole experience with the game.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you put it away and you want to try it again, there's no way to get all that experience back except by starting all over again or remembering what you did back then, which is often not the option.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also something like it's really interesting how more and more people play games with different backgrounds and different experience. And I think they all encounter different barriers as well, more than they did before. Maybe we're more aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you said, like the target group is changing. When I had my Nintendo, like there were not many options. But now we're talking about, well, Prince of Persia, for example. You have this specific approach on dying. And you can choose that approach. If you like a game to have such an approach, there's a game for you. And probably
Like,
there's a game for me as well.
one thing I will note is I watched recently a full playthrough of Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
Number 4, the newest one. I would say that is not only a nostalgia trip with new ideas thrown into the mix, but it's also how to bring a classic style game into a modern era with really good accessibility. And the reason I say this, right, is just from what I've noticed. In the majority of the game, even in the hardest levels, checkpoints are closer together than they were in the past. Sometimes levels can actually get longer than even the longest Crash Bandicoot 3 levels, but sometimes those levels had you go 3 to 5 minutes of constant running, jumping, and spinning before you found your next checkpoint. So if you died, you'd have to do that whole length over again. Whereas in Crash 4, you're never going longer than 2 minutes without finding a checkpoint.
So it's like they've looked at the old game with new glasses and said, hey.
Yeah. Levels are still just as long, if not slightly longer. The checkpoints are just more plentiful. Not only that, but you don't have to worry about extra lives anymore. You can die on a section as many times as it takes you to get through it. That being said, for those old school traditionalists who can play a Crash Bandicoot level that's super long and super difficult in 3 lives or less, hey, bonus objective. Do it in 3 lives or less, and here, have a gem.
Yeah, good for you. Good luck.
Yeah, it gives challenge runs for people who want the challenge run. And heck, even people with disabilities or people who might not be able to do it the first time. Yeah, I forgot about that, PC Guy. There's also the classic mode that you can choose, which does have a life count, extra life count.
Yeah, so you have options.
Yeah.
And it's basically what I like about sandbox games is you can pick your own challenge. And I guess that's
Exactly.
true as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you want something that's super nostalgic and you miss having to worry about, oh, I've only got one life left to clear this level, I hope I don't die, then by all means, choose your classic mode. But if you're like me and prefer the modern conveniences of, why are you making me waste my time playing this whole level again, even though I've already proved that I could do it once?
Yeah.
Just because I couldn't do this next part? To me, that's an annoyance.
It's a different challenge, right?
Exactly.
And now we get a big question.
Agreed. And, like, here's the deal, though, with the onboarding aspect. It's not so much that you need large wall text blocks of tutorials, but you need lots of instances where the gameplay mechanics teach the player how to play, instead of having to learn through reading all this text and complicated stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
The hand holding.
So, like, yeah, look at the Mario Brothers example. Mario Brothers is a prime example of teaching players how to play as the game progresses. You know, you're first given your first little area of space where there's no hazards, no threats.
Yep.
It gives you time to move around, jump, spin, or, you know, do whatever you need to do to learn the controls. And then you have your first enemy. Just kind of sort of scrolling across the screen. And even Crash Bandicoot 4, or, you know, It's About Time, the new Crash Bandicoot game, every single level starts off the Mario way. You get a nice, safe platform, and then it throws very easy obstacles related to the current level at you. And as you go through that level, those obstacles pick up and get more intense and more progressively hard.
Yeah. It's basically like one more mechanic, one more mechanic, one more mechanic. It's just piling them on, right?
Mm-hmm. But it never piles the mechanics on so thick that you can't understand it. Even in the latest levels of the game, the most you'll have to deal with at one time is maybe 4 mechanics at once.
So it's all still manageable and being able to pick it up again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I also prefer turn-based games much more than before, for likewise reasons.
Exactly. But PC Guy, that's the thing, though. Let's say you go 10, 15 hours into that RPG, and then you put the game down for 6 months.
Yeah.
Whenever you come back, you're left wondering, where am I? How do I do this? What do I do? There's no middle stage onboarding that can bring you back in without reading a crap ton of leftover tutorial boxes in a menu that may not even be there.
Yeah, for example, I started a replay of Baldur's Gate. There we come again. The first version, but the enhanced edition. And what you see much more in modern games than before is that you have this interactive map and a journal, and that you actually know, like, oh, this is what I was doing. These were my goals. This is where I am. This is where I'm heading. And if you look you look at an old Zelda or Link game, good luck knowing where you are in the world. You know, it's like when you're playing, it's a challenge, and even more if you're looking back. And I think that's something recent. Like they give you much more things to hold on to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Yeah. I hope it's more and more. That's one of the reasons maybe that I'm interested in Baldur's Gate 3, just to see where they've gone with everything, you know? Like the previous game is now 12 years old or something. I don't know. The first one. So how much have they grown? How much have they learned? Have they learned?
Oh, it's being done by a different dev team. It's being done by Larian Studios. So if you have played Divinity Original Sin 2, I think you're going to feel right at home.
I have not, so that's a good surprise.
Yeah, it's a good one. I will recommend it if you're any passing interest at all. Pick it up, give it a look, because it'll give you what to expect.
Yeah, it's when I replayed the original Baldur's Gate, I was actually pretty impressed by the story, which is uncommon these days, I guess. Like, you've had these people that came back in the story from the beginning of the game. They came back later, and they evolved as well. They changed as well. They had their own storyline and background. So it was like storytelling that you were a part of. This real world building quality that you always have with Dungeons and Dragons. That's something I really enjoyed. Oh yeah, Divinity is on regular sale. That's true. Yeah, I've seen it so many times. I've been tempted, but yeah, time. I spent my time streaming.
I feel you on the time part. I feel you on the time part.
Yeah, I actually have a box less than a meter away from me. It's a pen plotter. Are you familiar with plotters?
Vaguely.
It's basically a device that lets me put in one or multiple pens, and it draws on paper. And I can do some creative coding and make really fun stuff. And it's still in the box because I haven't found the time yet. I would like to stream an entire evening each week just to explore this thing, but I haven't found the time yet. So,
wow.
Yeah, games serve their specific goals.
Most indefinitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope to. I actually started playing. What's it called again? Oh, I'm so bad with names, even worse than before. These auto battler games. Have you ever played an auto battler game?
I have, actually. Some of those are kind of fun.
Yeah? How do they work well for you?
Yes and no. There's actually one recently announced. I saw it on Twitter. That is fully voice acted and voiceovered with narrated menus and everything like that. I'd love to go back and remember the name of it because I'd like to check that one out.
Yeah, it's like this interesting contrast. On one hand, it feels very turn-based and very slow, and you just sit and click. But on the other hand, there's so many things that you can keep track of and do, and it can get pretty complicated, it feels. Yeah, I'm gonna find out again. Maybe I'll quit. Sometimes I have like these binges, you play it for a few days and I spent too much time on this. I could have done something useful. Oh yeah, and the sad thing is most of those types of games push for microtransactions. Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather
annoying thing.
Yeah, I'd rather pay a game and play the game than play and pay all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's also what withheld me from playing much games on my mobile, because how many fun mobile games are there really? There are so many that just focus on microtransactions. It's so hard.
Yeah, mostly the mobile game market is mostly pay to win.
Yeah.
Start paying a game and eventually you'll get to a point where if you're not paying, you're not winning and it's not fun. And then you get back in that mindset of it's only $1. I can afford to pay the $1. Just let me win this once.
Yeah, and then another $1 and another $1, and you don't want to wait.
And before you know it, you've already spent $3,000 and wondering why your credit card bill's so high.
Yeah, I'm so happy we're not used to credit cards where I live. That makes it easier, maybe. It's a sort of barrier of spending money. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's the sunk cost fallacy. You say, I've already spent $10. Let's make it 11. And then 11 becomes 100 and 1,000. And I'm glad I never fell into that hole.
There's no end to it, and it's annoying. That model of gaming needs to go away. It needs to burn, but it never will because it's way too profitable.
Because have you played mobile games? Is there anything specific for accessibility in mobile games?
Actually, no. There aren't too many overall accessible mobile games, especially if you're on Android. Most of the accessible mobile games are on iPhone, which is unfortunate. At least for the blind, anyway.
Aren't iPhones more popular?
Among blind people, yeah. And I think that's in part because Apple's got the money to throw around, and it's annoying that more blind people across the country don't know that Android is now an equally accessible option compared to Apple products.
Especially with a lot of web-based apps. The options are there, right?
Yes, options are there. I am an Android fan, Android main through and through. Never going to touch an iPhone if I can help it.
Not gonna enter the walled garden.
No. No. You can keep your walled garden. I want out of it. You can't cage me.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, with a walled garden, it's hard to appreciate from afar as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, but John, I've learned a lot from you. Even in casual conversation, there's a lot of things to think about for me. I'm just gonna ask to the chat if there are any questions for you, and I think I'm gonna call it a night because, yeah, there's stuff to do, games to play, right?
Indeed. No questions from me. I
Nope.
think this has been an awesome chat, and I
Yeah,
appreciate being here.
yeah. It's every chat is a learning experience. So I really enjoy it. I'm not seeing much questions now. So let's just talk about the near future for a second. Like, do you have any plans for the next few weeks, months, years, maybe?
Not really. I mean, we do have an Accessible Streamers fundraiser that we're planning sometime in November.
Yeah,
We'll keep you posted on that as a fellow team member. So,
yeah.
I
Looking
also
forward.
have another fundraiser coming up called the 12 Days of Indie, hosted on a partnered streamers channel, done with a bunch of people pulling this one off for Toys for Tots coming up, and I'll have more info on the exact dates and times for that one too on my
Yeah,
Twitter.
because you're building quite a crowd these days, right?
Not really so much the crowd. I just stay very busy.
Okay, yeah, that's two things. Good to separate them.
I keep myself busy in the hopes that I may one day attract the crowd.
Yeah, yeah. Just keep growing slowly, and you'll get there. Oh, I
Exactly.
shouldn't forget to mention. Next week I will be a official Hacktoberfest event. So Hacktoberfest is this thing that people in October make pull requests on GitHub and they contribute to open source. Next week I'll be available for questions that people can ask me anything about accessibility. So that's a thing. And the week after, we're gonna do something I really look forward to. We're gonna have another guest. You're not really active on the web or Twitter stuff, but I'm gonna mention her anyway. You know a little bit about technology. If
I do?
if I tell you what a div is, a div element on a web page,
Yes.
it's probably your most hated web element because it doesn't do or say
Mm-hmm.
anything. There's a
Mm-hmm.
person on Twitter. Her name is Lynn Fisher, and she does CSS-based illustrations, and she calls it a single div. So she takes a div element and turns it into something beautiful, and she's gonna join us on stream. So that's in 2 weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. Just like I've enjoyed tonight. Thank you so much, John. I'm not seeing any new questions, only thanks. So thank you also from the
Indeed.
people watching. And if there's anything, people can always reach you on Twitter or on Twitch, of course. GlitchedVision.
Yep. GlitchedVision0101 on Twitch or at GlitchedVision on Twitter.
Okay.
Both good places.
Then I'm going to press the magic stop streaming button. And I want to thank everybody for joining us in whatever time zone they are. And thanks for your questions. Thanks for your interest. And I hope to see you around again. Bye-bye.
Indeed, it was an honor.
Thank you.